Yo, hold up. Joe McCann just walked. Like, the man whose fiancée mysteriously died in Zanzibar a month ago? Tanzania just handed him back his passport and said, "Go home, king." And TMZ, yeah, that TMZ is out here writing like it's a grieving hero of the story. Nah, brew. The internet ain't blind. Joe really thought a 5-headline PR sprint was gonna make us get Ashlee Jenae in the ground? Before we get into it, subscribe, don't miss it. Nah, Joseph McCann, Joe to y'all. The crypto hedge fund asymmetric guy from Portland just got his American passport back from Tanzanian authorities and is officially cleared to fly back to U.S. soil. The story dropped May 8, 2026, as a TMZ exclusive, straight from his lawyer Edward Andrew Polczyk. Joe really thought slipping back into the country at an undisclosed location would look casual. Now let's look at the receipts that show why this whole framing is dirty. Let's start with the article itself, because every line is a planted seed. In the TMZ piece dated May 8, 2026, Joe's lawyer Edward Andrew Polczyk told him, and I quote, "Authorities in Tanzania returned Joe's American passport to him yesterday after he remained in Tanzania for nearly a month while cooperating with authorities." When I read that line, I had to do a double take. Cooperating? Bro hasn't said one public word for 30 days, then suddenly is a cooperative grieving fiancé? Nah, that's the dumbest flex I've ever read. Then Edward keeps cooking the narrative. Same article. This was not a newly issued passport from the State Department. It was Joe's actual passport that he voluntarily handed over to authorities a day after Ashlee's passing. That word voluntarily, that's a publicist's fingerprint right there. They want the word stamped in your subconscious. He didn't lose it. He didn't have it confiscated, which is what 6ABC and BBC originally reported. By the way, he voluntarily surrendered it. When I saw this rewrite happen in real time, I was like, yo, this is a textbook PR scrub. Now flip to the line that should have been the headline. TMZ literally wrote, "Authorities haven't said publicly if Joe has been officially cleared by authorities in the investigation, but clearly Joe is not under intense suspicion if they are letting him leave." Read that twice. They admit, out loud, that he is not cleared, then in the same sentence try to spin it like he basically is. Bro said what? That's where Joe lost the plot. You can't write that sentence with a straight face and expect grown people to nod along. Now Joe's own words. May 5th, 2026. Same day as Ashlee's funeral in Paulsboro, New Jersey, a funeral he was blocked from attending, he finally drops his love letter. He writes about Ashlee being his best friend, about how she would want me to keep going, and tries to paint himself as a broken fiancé. When I heard the timing, bro, you go silent for 30 days, then post on the day they're literally lowering her? Nah, that's not grief. That's a PR rollout calendar. Earlier, on April 14th, 2026, TMZ themselves reported a family statement. Ashlee's people said they've heard next to nothing from her fiancé Joe McCann since her tragic death in Tanzania. That's a family. Yolanda, Harry, the whole orbit, saying on record this man went ghost. When I read that and then read the new cooperative narrative, I was like, who exactly was he cooperating with if not the family of the woman he allegedly loved? And here's the kicker. According to Complexing People, on April 3rd, 2026, Ashlee posted that safari proposal video, McCann on one knee against the African sunset. Days later, she's gone. She turned 31 on that trip. That was supposed to be a birthday engagement combo. People magazine confirmed she died while vacationing in Zanzibar with Joe shortly after the engagement. When I lined up that proposal post with a death date, I had to rewind the timeline 3 times. Now let's connect the dots. Remember that May 8th article? Dropped 72 hours after the funeral he was banned from. That's not coincidence. That's a planned narrative reset. Joe's team knew the funeral footage would dominate the news cycle, so they queued up the cleared to come home story to flip the script the second the casket closed. Any smart team would have waited a week. But Joe isn't running a smart team. He's running a panic team. Now the lawyer. Edward Andrew Polczyk isn't some random Portland attorney. This is the same Edward Polczyk who has been publicly identified as one of Donald Trump's personal lawyers, the one who sent a $10 billion threat letter to the New York Times and Penguin Random House. He also represented Martin Shkreli, aka Farmer Bro. So when Joe called his Rolodex, he didn't dial a grief counselor. He dialed a slapshoot specialist. That tells you everything about what this defense is about. Silencing critics, not finding answers. Joe really thought hiring Trump's lawyer wouldn't raise eyebrows? That's terrible optics. Brew. Then the money trail. Joe's hedge fund, Asymmetric, was backed by some of the biggest names in tech, Mark Andreessen, Chris Dixon, Circle. But Fortune reported that in mid-2025 his liquid trading fund quietly closed after heavy losses. So when this Tanzania trip happened in April 2026, Joe wasn't the high-flying crypto king the headlines suggest. He was a guy whose flagship product had imploded less than a year prior. That context matters because it changes a question from why would he to what was the financial pressure under all this. His statement dropped while her body was being lowered into the ground in New Jersey. Her body, by the way, was returned to the family without her engagement ring. Let that sit. The ring, the symbol of the proposal he posted to the world days earlier, never came home. Any innocent man will be on every podcast asking where that ring is. Joe? Silent for 30 days. That's the move of someone who isn't smart with optics. The hotel? Zuri Zanzibar. The family is still fighting to get the surveillance footage from that resort per multiple reports. Think about that. A month in, and the camera footage that would clear or condemn him still isn't public. So when TMZ types not under intense suspicion, they are typing it while the most important piece of evidence in the case is still locked behind Tanzanian authorities. Joe's people really thought nobody would connect that dot? Nah. Now check this out. Nobody's talking about the word choice in the lawyer's statement. Zoom into one specific phrase. Voluntarily handed over. That's not a legal phrase. That's not how Tanzanian police log evidence. That's a marketing phrase. A real legal filing would say surrendered pursuant to investigation. But voluntarily is doing emotional work. It's planting consent in your brain. And Joe's lawyer, Polczyk, really thought we wouldn't notice the spin? That's a problem with hiring a defamation lawyer for a death investigation. They're trained for the courtroom of public opinion, not actual homicide procedure. Now zoom into another phrase from the same article. Undisclosed location on U.S. soil. One word, undisclosed. An innocent man flies straight to Portland, hugs his mom, hugs Ashlee's mom, lights a candle, posts a receipt of the wire transfer he's making to her family's grief fund. He doesn't go to an undisclosed location. That word is the entire confession. When you've done nothing wrong, your address isn't a security risk. When you have something to hide, suddenly geography becomes classified. Joe doesn't have half a brain if he signed off on that line. Look at the timing of his love letter too. Not the words, the clock. He goes radio silent for 30 days, doesn't even call Yolanda himself when Ashlee was rushed to the hospital. The hospital had to call her family, while Joe sat there for an alleged 11 hours, and then he resurfaces on May 5th, 2026, funeral day. That's not grief timing. That's PR timing. Grief doesn't check a calendar. Publicists do. Then there's a legal fine print nobody's reading. Tanzanian law allows authorities to hold someone for questioning significantly longer than U.S. 48 to 72-hour windows without a formal arrest. So when TMZ says he was never arrested, never locked up, that's technically true and totally meaningless. He could have been the prime suspect the entire time, and that line would still be accurate. Joe's lawyer knows this. He's banking on you not knowing this. That's a manipulation. And the Mr. Blonde comment pinned at the top of the TMZ comment section, 3 hours old, sitting above 1 hour old comments. That's not organic. Comment ordering on TMZ is editorial. Somebody decided that after a month-long investigation, it's time to accept the case at face value should be the first thing readers see. That's not journalism. That's narrative engineering. And Joe's team really thought a pin-bot comment would sway us? Embarrassing. Here's where the media split is wild. TMZ framed it as Joe is cleared, going home, victim of online rumors. They used the word voluntarily and parroted Polczyk almost verbatim. But People magazine framed it completely differently. The headline emphasized that police have not shared recent updates about the status of the investigation and noted Joe still hasn't returned to public life. Same facts, two universes. Then Complex went a different direction entirely. They highlighted Zanzibar police probing his statement, framing him as an active person of interest, not a cleared man. And KGW, the Portland local outlet, leaned hard on the family suspicion angle and the missing engagement ring, refusing to call him cleared. That's 3 major outlets reading the same wire and coming to still under investigation, while TMZ alone is publishing the clearance narrative. That's not coverage. That's a campaign. Now the counter-narrative. Some Joe defenders online are saying the man lost his fiancée, leave him alone, is innocent until proven guilty. Cool. Then explain why his entire family-in-law publicly says they haven't heard from him. Explain why he was barred from the funeral. Explain why he hired a Trump-slap lawyer instead of, say, a victim's advocate. Explain why his silence ended exactly when the algorithm needed it to. Those defenders are reaching the same way they reach for every L they've taken this month. And listen, TMZ has lawyers on staff. They know that not under intense suspicion if they're letting him leave is legally meaningless. That sentence exists for ONE reason, to manipulate you while staying technically defensible. The fact that TMZ is the ONLY major outlet running the clearance angle, while Complex, People, KGW, and Fox News are all running the still under investigation angle, tells you everything about who's getting fed. Mainstream media wants you to think this is just a sad love story complicated by international jurisdiction. Here's what nobody is saying out loud. This isn't about justice. This is about restoring a brand. Joe McCann doesn't need a passport to grieve. Joe McCann needs a passport to fundraise. Asymmetric, the hedge fund that made him a name on Fox Business and at the SALT conference, took losses through 2025 and quietly restructured. The crypto winter wasn't kind. So when a man whose entire identity is built on raising capital from Andreessen, Dixon, and Circle suddenly gets stranded in Tanzania under suspicion in his fiancée's death, that's not just a personal crisis. That's a total brand collapse. No LP on earth wires money to a guy with that headline. So what does Joe need? He needs a headline to flip from question to cleared. He needs to walk into a Miami crypto conference 6 months from now and say, yeah, that was just rumors. TMZ even confirmed I was cooperative. That's why this PR sprint is so aggressive. That's why he hired a Trump-tier defamation specialist instead of a quiet criminal defense lawyer. Joe McCann is a puppet, but the strings ain't being pulled by a label. They're being pulled by his portfolio. The man is fighting for his cap table, not his name. And here's the part that should sting. Ashlee Jenae's brand was real. She built a community, a following, a voice that people loved. Joe's brand is manufactured. Its panel appearances, podcast circuits, and recycled Solana product market fit talking points. Listen to that crypto interview from a year ago. I'm a big fan of the global liquidity narrative and meme. Bro, that's not insight. That's keyword soup. His whole persona is performance, and now that the performance is cracking, he needs a media to glue it back together fast. Now here's a historical pattern nobody's connecting. Remember how the D4VD Celeste Rivas case played out in LA? Singer David Anthony Burke was questioned for months. People online were screaming Lapt is incompetent, they're letting him walk. Then suddenly, boom, first-degree murder, continuous sexual acts, the whole charge sheet drops. The lesson? Not arrested doesn't mean not coming for you. It means investigators are still building. Joe and his fans are repeating the same mistake D4VD's defenders made, confusing patience with vindication. That's a losing side of history. Fam. The forbidden truth is this: Yolanda and Harry, Ashlee's parents, are not playing the media game. They are playing the legal game. They didn't bury their daughter's body. That's not symbolism. That's evidence preservation. They commissioned an independent autopsy in the United States. They are fighting for that Zuri Zanzibar hotel surveillance footage. They are playing chess while Joe's team is playing TMZ Twitter. Joe is celebrating a passport. They are building a case file. Who do you think wins that race? And the cultural moment matters. We are living in the post-D4VD, post-Diddy, post-everything era where we finally learned that media favorable doesn't mean innocent. Influencer audiences aren't 2014 audiences. We've been burned enough times to recognize the playbook. The publicist might be A1, but the audience graduated from his class. Joe McCann represents the OLD god who thinks a TMZ exclusive cleans a stain. The culture is done with that move. So when you see his fans typing, "Leave him alone," those are the same voices that defended every guy who later got charged. Their track record is undefeated in being wrong. The receipts ain't with TMZ. The receipts are sealed in a Tanzanian evidence locker and a New Jersey medical examiner's drawer. And that's the truth they won't tell you. So what happens next? Joe's gonna land at his undisclosed location within days. He'll lay low for 2, maybe 3 weeks. Then watch. He's gonna test the waters with a soft podcast appearance, probably crypto-adjacent, maybe a bankless or a niche VC show, where he'll cry on cue and say, "I just want to clear my name." Mark my words. But here's where Joe will look desperate. Every comment section under that podcast is going to be war. He's about to learn that the internet has a longer memory than his publicist retainer. The silence after his love letter is gonna hurt him more than any diss track ever could, because nobody's gonna engage on his terms. If Tanzanian authorities or the U.S. Attorney's Office unseal new evidence, and given the independent autopsy results are still pending in New Jersey, that's a real possibility. Joe is not ready for what comes next. We saw what happened in the D4VD case. Months of their letting him walk turned into a first-degree murder complaint overnight. If that hotel surveillance footage from Zuri Zanzibar surfaces and contradicts a single line of Joe's story, this man's free for now turns into extradite him by Tuesday. Joe's playing checkers while Yolanda and Harry are playing chess, and they've been 3 moves ahead the entire month. Looking at the bigger picture, this case is going to become a reference point. 5 years from now, when influencers post engagement videos on safari trips, comment sections are going to remember Ashlee Jenae. That's her legacy from this. She's going to change how an entire generation of creators think about international travel with partners. And Joe? Joe's gonna be the cautionary tale at every venture capital due diligence meeting from now until forever. No serious LP is wiring 8 figures to a fund manager whose Wikipedia page leads with fiancé's death investigation. His asymmetric brand is over. His Fox Business soundbites are over. The crypto Twitter threads quoting him? Over. His watching the culture move on without him. And there's nothing his Trump-tier lawyer can write a threat letter against to stop it. The hotel surveillance footage is coming. The independent autopsy report is coming. The wiretap-style cooperation between U.S. and Tanzanian authorities, yeah, that exists in international cases, look up MLAT treaties, is coming. Yolanda and Harry's full press conference, on their timeline, not TMZ's, is coming. And when it does, the conversation flips overnight. Joe McCann's passport being returned isn't the END of this story. It's the eye of the hurricane. The second half hasn't even started. Whatever happens, one thing's clear. Joe McCann already lost. He lost a family. He lost a funeral. He lost a narrative everywhere except the one outlet his team owns. He lost the engagement ring story. He lost the public's trust. The only thing he hasn't lost yet is his freedom, and that asterisk on the headline tells you the clock is still ticking. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say. Ring that bell for notifications. And if you want more truth bombs like this, click on one of these videos next. Trust me, you'll want to see what we found.